Welcome to Enterprise Aligned AI, the podcast where we interview enterprise leaders on the reality of agentic AI adoption. What gets deployed in security-conscious regulated enterprises? My guest today is Vinh Tran, Vice President of Data and AI Platforms at Royal Bank of Canada and an RBC Fellow at RBC Borealis. He leads the transformation of Canada's largest bank into an AI-powered enterprise. Vinh has built enterprise-scale infrastructure on AWS, Azure, and GCP, serving thousands of developers and millions of customers. Royal Bank of Canada is a global leader in AI in financial services, ranking number 1 in Canada and number 3 globally for AI maturity on the 2025 Evident AI Index. Vinh, you bring very strong technical background to this role. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and your mission.
Thank you, Aparna, and thank you for having me here. I joined RBC in 2019. So I spent 6 years leading the cloud program, building cloud platforms on AWS and Azure to really bring transformative cloud capabilities to the bank. So fast forward 6 years now, and I'm doing something very similar with AI. AI is now the transformative technology. We want to enable this capability for all our development teams and all our application teams at the bank. And we want to make sure we do it in a way that's responsible, secure, and resilient. My team's really responsible for bringing those AI capabilities to the bank. And that covers both the data and AI platforms, because data we look at as the fuel to our AI. Prior to that, I spent 3 years at another Canadian bank, Scotiabank. That's where you and I met, where I was doing a lot of the work on our Google Cloud platform. And before that, I spent time at a startup. And prior to that, I spent about 8 years, a good span in consulting. And when I think about my technology journey, I think about all of those different experiences and how they improved me as a technologist. So I started off building software, and I was a software developer. And then when I went to consulting, I really learned how to build relationships, how to deliver, how to drive value, and kind of how to sell my services there. At the startup, I was largely responsible for the operations, the engineering, the technology. So I really learned how to run a team, how to run a business, because in addition to the support and operations and engineering, I had to worry about leases and HR and payroll and these kind of things. And then when I went to the Canadian banks, I really learned how to operate and deliver at scale with that scrutiny, with that rigor, and with that enterprise mentality and requirements, meeting those enterprise requirements. So it's been a pretty awesome journey for me from a technology perspective. And I think all of those steps along the way really helped develop me into who I am today.
So you're leading the AI transformation at the largest bank in Canada. What does this AI transformation entail? What is the time horizon? What is the scale? And what is really the nature of this transformation?
Yeah, it's a pretty massive transformation. So last March, we had our 2025 Investor Day. RBC had held an Investor Day, and our CEO made a commitment to the street that we would drive $700 million to $1 billion of value through AI. Right? That's shortly after that, I joined our Borealis team, who's responsible for the data and AI platforms to enable that value. The transformation is really it's pretty incredible, because it reaches the entire organization. All 5 of our lines of businesses, our technology and operations team, everybody is committed to this, to delivering on that value commitment. But we're seeing that it's not just we're driving the value not just from the 6 or 7 or 8,000 developers or data scientists, which is historically where AI was being utilized. We're now looking at transforming the 96,000 to everybody with a computer, every mortgage broker, every engineer, every branch manager. This is really a holistic transformation where we're lifting the entire organization. I think that's what really resonated to me, and that's really why I wanted to be part of this journey. Was we have an opportunity to change how everybody works, how everybody does their job, and drive more efficiency, drive more productivity, but also be able to do things that people were never able to do before. What we're seeing right now with some of the AI and agentic tools that we've released and we've made available is that we can now drive insights across multiple data sources and have humans explore that data just with natural language, which is a very powerful thing, which changes how everybody does their work. So the time horizon we've committed to is, I think, end of 2027 for us to be able to drive that value. So putting that timeline on it has also really accelerated and focused the organization on delivering these capabilities. So it's a really exciting time for us.
Looking ahead, what are the most impactful applications of agents in banking and at RBC, and how are you selecting which use cases to prioritize, and also which use cases not to prioritize, or anything that's not applicable for AI?
Oh, great question. Our agentic journey has really just started, I think, probably last May or June. So we're very early, and the whole world is very early, probably a year into agentic as an industry, as a technology. What we're seeing, some of the use cases that we're starting with that we think can help us build this muscle and build the confidence is a lot of the internal use cases. So as an organization, as a huge organization with 17 million, 18 million clients, we still have a lot of manual processes. There's those interactions with our clients. When we look for those areas where we've got a lot of interactions and we've got a lot of scale, and that's an opportunity for us to apply agentic AI capabilities. Another common use case we're seeing is around agents that can provide insight to human agents that are interfacing with our clients. So let's say you call our call center and you're having this conversation. Behind the scenes, we've got our call center agent, our human agent, looking at a screen that has more insight and has more information for that on that client. That allows our agent, our human agent, to be more effective, to provide better insight, to leverage all of the data available to them in the organization, not just whatever is in their file folder at that time. So those use cases we're seeing drive a lot of value. Do I think that one day we'll have AI directly interfacing with our clients? Possibly. We would never say. I wouldn't say never. But right now, when the technology is pretty nascent and pretty new, and we're building those muscles, we're continuing to build our confidence in this capability. And we find that these back office capabilities are the best way for us to drive value as well as improve the experience for our clients.
Now, your CEO has laid out a target of $700 million to $1 billion by the end of 2027. A big question in AI on everybody's mind is the return on investment, or the ROI of these AI projects. The investment is significant. I mean, these models, the tokens cost money, and you've got talent, and you've got an organizational cost that goes along with implementing these changes. Is the return worth the investment? And really the question is, how do you measure the return on this investment? Is it mostly a productivity benefit to the bottom line, or is there also top line impact in terms of additional revenue or additional customers? How are you thinking about and measuring the return on investment from AI?
Yeah, absolutely. When the CEO goes to the street and says we're going to drive that value, then it's absolutely measurable, and it has to be well defined and easy to quantify. The way we're measuring that value is we're saying that these AI projects, we've initiated 8 or 9 projects that are specifically going to generate that value. So those projects have very clear KPIs and measures, and they will either drive more revenue or they will decrease costs. And we've got our accountants and we've got our finance teams really measuring those statistics and that information so that we can accurately track and report it. But primarily right now, it's between these nine or so projects that will continue to across the 5 lines of businesses and our technology and operations that will measure and drive that value.
Tell us a little bit more about the measurement process, meaning are you primarily choosing workflows that already have some metrics associated with them, and then you can surgically insert AI and then see the before and after picture?
Across these different projects and these different initiatives, the revenue opportunities, I think those are reasonably easy to measure by introducing these AI capabilities with these products. Beforehand, what was our revenue, and afterwards, with these new capabilities, how has that changed our revenue? Right. So that's from a cost perspective. The way we're across some of the different initiatives, we're measuring, can we reduce the human effort? And in our call centers, we've been able to measure that pretty effectively to say, hey, we take these millions of calls every year, and they've got a pretty good statistic on if I save 1 second on every call, what is the effective values that and cost savings that I can drive. There's some very simple things we've done with AI, whether it's providing those call center agents with information, or at the end of each call, the act of summarizing the call and putting in their notes and their details, that takes a significant amount of time for every call. And we've been able to use AI to do that work. And then we still have the human look at it and say, oh, no, does that look about right? But it has been a blessing to the call center agents to not have to do this part of the work. Imagine you go through a long call, and then after that call, you've got other calls waiting there, but you've got to quickly go through and do your notes, and then imagine doing that dozens or hundreds of times a day, what that does to your brain. So letting AI do that while you can rest a little and then just review, that completely changes how they operate. And it also obviously allows them to handle more calls and allows us to be able to measure and quantify that cost savings. Mm-hmm. If we are building 20 different capabilities for these 9 projects, it's probably not going to give us the scale and give us the speed we need to achieve this. But if we can build capabilities that are reusable across these lines of business, I think you mentioned some of these note taker capabilities, right? Having an agent, having something that can summarize calls, can create notes, can send them out afterwards. That's something that will benefit multiple lines of business, right? So that's how we need to be strategic and smart about enabling those capabilities and how we do it so that it is reusable, so that we can scale.
Are you seeing an impact differential either in speed or in the actual outcome from an ROI perspective between agents that you build and agents that you can buy? And how do you make a decision, especially as models evolve and open source technologies appear, and you have obviously in-house research that you do. How do you decide between what to build and what to buy?
It's a very good question, and I think the build versus buy conversation has really evolved over the years I've been at RBC and working in technology. I recall when I first started in banking, I remember somebody saying, Vin, we're in the business of lending money. We're not in the business of building software. And anytime we had a problem, the first phone call was always to a vendor or a consulting firm, right? And that was historically how we did things. But I think a lot has changed in those years. And 3 things I look at. The first thing is open source. So the adoption of open source, the ecosystem and the support around open source. the days of oh, you can't run open source in production, that's it's a misnomer. It's no longer valid. Everybody is running open source in some capacity in production. So the ecosystem to support it and open source has really allowed us to move away from having to write every line of code, millions of lines of code to build something, and be more integrators. So writing code that can integrate these open source projects that we can acquire enterprise support for. The second thing is these coding tools. Look at these tools, and they're allowing our engineers to build things now 10 times as fast, 100 times as fast. It's starting to make the development hurdle. It's starting to lower that bar, right? So building that code, stabilizing it, writing the test cases. This is what these code assist tools are really good at. And then third thing that's really changed is our environments, our software, and the cloud has really allowed us to access capabilities and services that were really the domain of large software vendors before. Now anybody can deploy these services quickly and test. So I believe that these three things have really changed the landscape and lowered the bar to build. And when we build, I feel passionate about it. It certainly helps from a cost savings perspective. So you're generally going to you can save money by building, but I don't think that's the most important thing. I think when you're in a regulated industry like we are, having control of your destiny, being able to incorporate your policies, your guidelines, patch your code, do everything that we need to do to meet regulatory requirements. It's powerful for us to be able to have that have that control in our own hands. And secondly, it creates a great culture. So when we start building ourselves, when we have that expectations and when we have that courage to build and engineer these solutions ourselves, I am confident that we improve the culture of engineering. We drive engineering excellence. We deliver capabilities that and impact to the organization. So I really feel myself that building, we have to have the courage to build. We're not going to write every line of code. We're going to use the tools. We're going to use the cloud. We're going to use the community. But I think that allows us to really drive benefits for the organization and our clients.
So you've emphasized build and the role of open source and the role of these coding tools. I have two follow-up questions. One question is regarding to, I guess, who can build? What sort of talent do you look for in this new world? Is it people that have a lot of familiarity with these agentic tools? And then is it only the central platform team that can build? Or, with these tools, I'm building things, can anybody in RBC build? So that's my first question.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the goal of our platforms. Our platforms, we've designed them such that all different roles and different technologists can implement and build themselves. What we've done with these platforms is build really predictable patterns. So especially with AI, we've said here's the models that you can have access to, and we put them behind a gateway, our LLM gateway. And the reason we do that is because we've gone and gotten approval. We've done our model risk management. We've done security controls. We've looked at the bias. We've looked at all these things across these models, and we've said, okay, these are the models that the bank is comfortable with. So we've got 8, 9, 10 models or so. So we give users pipelines to deploy, to use frameworks that are supported, that we have enterprise support for. Our goal is to not build everything ourselves. Our goal is to give our development teams the platform and the capabilities, and the path and a clear path, so that they can build things and know that the way they do it is safe and secure and compliant. Right? I think that's really how we scale as an organization. I think about going back to our $700 million to $1 billion worth of value that we're driving. We look at that as we're essentially trying to scale AI. And how do you scale AI? Well, we do that. We think there's three things we need to do to scale AI. We think we need the platform and foundations so that everybody that uses AI doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. And they know they can confidently do what they can do and what they can't do. So you've got to have the platform. You've got to have the access. So your users, and not just your developers, your mortgage brokers, your account managers, your wealth advisors, everybody has to have access to AI and the training and the educational materials, right? And then thirdly, I think what's important is having the templates and the examples and the reusable artifacts. As you're building, I think it's difficult to start with a blank page, right? Here's an empty folder and start building your AI. What we've done, which has really helped promote good AI use and standardization, is here's some scaffolding. Here's your Python project with LangChain and LangGraph references. Here's your app.py. Put your logic in here. Add your tools from our MCP Gateway. Register your tools here, and voila. And access some knowledge. Provide your prompt. Voila, you have an agent, right? I think those three things, the foundation, the access, and the reusable artifacts are key to enabling not just developers, but all technologists on our platform.
You mentioned that some of the models, you're buying them. There's also like a cottage industry of startups that are serving banks, that have all the very specific compliance and regulatory requirements, for very specific areas. And then there's horizontals, like, there's horizontals for meeting management or calendar management or note-taking or customer service. How are you deciding, and how are your LOBs deciding what to build versus what to buy?
So that's a good question as well. So what we've done with the platform is we tried to standardize and create a data and AI platform with pluggable components. And that's increasingly difficult in this world of AI because a lot of these platforms want to be end-to-end, right? So there's a lot of these agent builders that a lot of these platforms that they will build your agent, they will host it in a runtime environment. You can only connect to the MCP servers they offer and the data they access. So it's increasingly difficult for us to do that because with the nature and the speed that AI and Agentic is moving. But this platform with these pluggable components, when the business comes to us and says, "Hey, I want a new feature. I want a popular thing that has come up and that we're building is the lines of businesses want to be from their agents. They want to be able to access knowledge specific to their application, right? So their application knowledge, and historically we've had general knowledge from the large language model that they can use in their agents, web search capabilities. We've got some RBC enterprise knowledge that is available to all these agents, but having them customize and curate their own knowledge sources has been time consuming for teams. So that's one of the features we recognized that we needed. So we standardize on a protocol. MCP is how we're accessing data and we're accessing tools, and we've given these teams the ability to bring their own knowledge. And luckily we are sitting on the largest trove of data in RBC, which is our data platform. So our goal with our data platform is to be able to provide the knowledge to these AI agents, so and any agent can discover and connect to the knowledge or the data that sits in our Lumina data platform. So that's just an example of how we're making things available. It's by standardizing on things like MCP, on things like agent to agent, standardizing on the frameworks and OpenTelemetry. So we are hoping, and this is still a challenge because the industry is not standardizing on everything. we are hoping that by using these standard protocols where we can, that when we want to plug in a new observability tool, or we want to integrate a different SDK or framework, that thing supports that standard OpenTelemetry, let's say, and we hope that those things will connect. But it's a very it's a challenging time right now, because organizations are trying, software companies and AI companies are trying to move as fast as they can, and they're not exactly motivated to standardize right now. And some have, and Anthropics and have been very good about contributing back to standards to the community. But we're still seeing a lot of work, a lot of gaps, and we're hoping that as a leader, we can hopefully try to influence them.
The data platform, as you mentioned, is the sort of the lifeblood of AI. And many enterprises don't have a data platform that's AI ready. What steps have you taken or are planning to take to prepare your data and your APIs across the board, across the bank, for an agentic future?
No, it's definitely a key part of the work we're doing. And our Lumina data platform, we started it 5-6 years ago, before I joined the team, and it was focused on that data engineering experience. So we had a data lake, we had data warehouse on-prem, data lake, house, data warehouse in the cloud. We had data movement tools and data management tools to ensure that we could collect the metadata and make it discoverable. So I was very lucky. My predecessor did a lot of this hard work, and then we layered BI tools on it, and then we established semantic layers. And one of the things we're going through as an organization right now is adopting a data product mindset. So instead of everybody query the data from the data warehouse and everybody make copies of their data, we're really centralizing these products to say, we call them data hubs. Here's a data product that consists of retail credit data. Here's a data hub that consists of mortgage data. So that data, we have teams that curate that data, manage the semantic layer, manage the business logic, and that becomes the source of truth for that data. And when somebody wants data, the idea is they go through the catalog. They say, I'm looking for this type of data, and then they can find it, and then they can send a request to that data owner or that data custodian to share that data with them. So a lot of that work was underway well before our agentic journey. So now that we're moving quickly on this agentic journey, we're seeing that semantic layer, that data classification, that metadata is very important to the agents, right? So it's the work. We've got petabytes and petabytes of data. The work is underway, and there's still a lot of work to do. But we can start. We're seeing, especially with these 9 projects, that they're driving some of this work as well. And I think our lines of businesses, our application teams, they can see the value in this. They can see the value in, okay, I've got to make sure the data is classified and the metadata is in a certain way. Okay, I need to add a semantic layer on top of these things so that my business intelligence reporting and my agents can actually consume it. Otherwise, they look at these field names and nobody has any idea what these field names represent. So I think a lot of that work is well underway, and thank goodness for my predecessor, and thank goodness for that we've been on this journey. We didn't just start this, and I think a lot of organizations might just be starting it, and now they're probably looking at the petabytes of data and saying, okay, how do I transform this? And the other thing we're seeing now as an organization is that we can use AI to help us classify and generate the metadata. We can loop through all our data stores, and luckily it's pretty centralized in the data platform. We can loop through our data lakes. We can look for that data. We can make sure it's classified. We can make sure that it's available. And I think having that head start for us from a data perspective has really allowed us to fuel our AI ambitions. And even some of the areas where we haven't maybe created that semantic layer, the fact that we've done it in other areas, they can look over and they say, I don't have to solve that problem. I know this is where the semantic layer exists. This is how we model it. This is how we build our star schema. This is how, like, it's no longer solving the riddle. It's really just applying the solution is where we are.
Yeah. You mentioned many enterprises may not be in as ready a state as you are with their data. What advice do you have in terms of tools or best practices or tips for companies that don't have a great semantic layer or their data is not yet ready for agentic use? Are there tips and tools that can help?
Yeah, so there's a lot of tools, especially in finance. There's some pretty common tools that are being used. But what I would say is that what I see a lot across large enterprises is it's not a tool challenge. It's kind of a mindset challenge, and people want to opine on this stuff for a long time. So there's a lot of talking about it. There's the number of data lineage meetings I've been part of, and I think there's a tendency to try to be perfect here. And I think a lot of our data architects they're very smart people, and they can find scenarios where this may or may not work. But I recall us being in that position in 5-6 years ago, and thank goodness somebody just started and said, okay, we can argue about tools, we can argue about the lineage, we can do all this stuff, but we're just going to start and we're going to build a data catalog. And here's the data types, here's the classification, here's the schema. If you don't like it, we'll just iterate on it from there. And we've iterated, and here we are now, and there's still more iteration that needs to happen. There's more tagging and metadata that's required for AI. Because, for example, even a good example is the semantic model. The field name might be close to something the agent needs to discover. So tagging allows us to give that field name more than one label, one name, right? So, but we're evolving it, but we've started. And I think the challenge I see with a lot of organizations is a lot of architecture discussions, a lot of meetings, and then we're not able to move on something that is continuously changing and will evolve. Right?
And there's that startup mindset and that great leadership skill that you bring is that, you got to start, you got to get going in order to reach the destination. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to switch gears, ask you about a very important topic, which is reliability and security. Generative AI is a statistical technology. You talked about summarization. There are errors in summarization. That's why we measure the accuracy of summarization. And a lot of work in enterprises, particularly regulated enterprises, financial services, is of a deterministic nature. You want it to be the same every time. You want to be able to measure that it was exactly the right set of steps that was followed. And you get audited and you have to prove some of these things. So how do you manage for reliability of these agents and these summaries at the level that's needed for banking workflows?
Oh, that's a very common challenge. That's a common question I am asked, and we look at this control plane, we call it, right? So we think about the platform being a control plane for capabilities, and in that. So when developers and application teams use this platform, they need to be able to confidently use it and know that the way they're using it is the way that it has been approved, and security's looked at it. Our model risk folks have looked at it. Our cybersecurity organization, everybody's looked at it. So what we've incorporated a lot of controls throughout this platform and control plane, and a lot of guardrails. So we've incorporated guardrails which, for example, when it's assessing the intent of an email, the way that we've built this is that the intent is assessed using one model, and then we've got another model that reviews that to ensure that it agrees. And we could actually add a third model, but I don't think that's that's being used as often. We've got these guardrails that say, is this what is the input? The process happened. What is the output? Do we agree that that is an accurate output? And sometimes these guardrails also filter content. So did we find sensitive information as part of this output? Did we find content that we don't necessarily think should be returned? So that helps catch the hallucinations. That helps catch some of the security risks. And we have this throughout the platform. There are also controls that we've enforced to ensure that any production system changes, any material system changes have to go through a human in the loop. And we've put our MCP servers behind a gateway so that if you want to get to an MCP server from these agents, you got to go through this gateway. And that gateway has metadata on the tools and the MCP servers behind it. So we know that if you're calling this tool, you better have some human in the loop and plan that's approved before you can do that. So these are the type of controls we're implementing into the control plane. But even at an architecture level, and from an architecture perspective, we've got an AI architecture group that discusses these use cases and looks at the designs. And there is a tendency for everybody to create agents for everything, but sometimes you don't need an agent. Sometimes you don't need an LLM to opine or come up with some logic. Sometimes you can build that in a deterministic function, right? So that's how we're looking at this. First, is it the right use case? Is it a complex use case that requires an LLM and agentic capabilities? Okay, if it is, then let's make sure it's going through these controls so that we can judge, and then we can also have a human in the loop to approve these things.
Yes, and I've heard that before. A lot of use cases and workflows that are deterministic are perfectly automatable with reliable code. And it's like very cheap to do so and extremely reliable to do so. So how do you choose which use cases, or what would be the characteristics of use cases that require LLMs?
So we look at use cases that are complex, that are not necessarily whose data is constantly changing. So if you've got a function, or if you've got a calculation that will always output the same result, and you're going to use some math library, we don't need to do that with an LLM. And we look at the cost as well, and also the performance. There's a little more latency when we're calling LLMs, especially in the cloud. So I think the use cases we've seen is a lot of, like I mentioned with the emails, a lot of the human interaction stuff, because that's not predictable. It's very difficult to get. I guess you can do web forms and get people to choose the values and that they submit, but it's very hard to get standardized expected answers and formatted answers from humans. So those are some use cases that we see. Assessing intent, we see things like the text summarization and transcription. I find LLMs and even SLMs, small language models, are super at that, right? And having them summarize and having them read and maybe even drive some insights are really reliable use cases for us.
Now, for those free text or unstructured data kind of use cases, what is an acceptable summarization accuracy? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? Is it 99%? And how do you achieve that? Because a lot of times, when someone is speaking, they're going to have colloquial dialect. They're going to have, they're going to put PII. You have to redact the PII. Do you redact the PII before the summarization? What is an acceptable accuracy, and how do you achieve that with all the noise that could be in the data?
It's a pretty high bar. I was surprised by this. Our model risk work that we do, very high bar, and the way we're measuring that is constant evaluations. So, and I should have mentioned this last time in the previous question about how do we ensure reliability in the results. We're constantly evaluating not just our models but our agents, and this is where observability really comes in. Is very important for us. And I'm starting to see this across the industry as well, is don't just do evaluations once a week or once a month and throw 1,000 prompts at it. And what we're starting to do is we're collecting the telemetry from these agents, and we're constantly evaluating the plans and the actions that they're taking based on the input and the output, right? So constantly evaluating things is really important for us from a platform perspective and a reliability and resiliency.
All right. Well, given the privacy-sensitive environment at RBC, how empowered are general RBC associates to use AI in their work? For example, with RBC Assist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So not only are they empowered, but they're really being encouraged to use these tools. RBC Assist is what it originally started as our internal chatbot. This was early last year. I think we released it in May. So it started as a chatbot, and then we added some agentic capabilities to it. So you could ask a question, you could connect to some MCP servers, but then now you could create an agent that could reproduce that and help you do your work. And that really took off. It became very popular because it was able to really help our staff become more productive. It started as a productivity tool, but then now it's turned into even more than that. It's not just doing things faster, it's doing things they could never do before, like driving insights across multiple data sources. They upload some files. To their attachments, and then they can have a large language model analyze and drive insights across that in combination with MCP servers that are returning data from the enterprise or from their application. So it's been it's been very effective for our users, and we're starting to see users use this every day. It's becoming a part of their day-to-day routines. We've seen users. Well, I see a lot of our product managers use it to synthesize and summarize all of their Jira boards to say, okay, look at all my Jira boards and what progress have I made? Right? It's really become a key to productivity for our staff, and I think that's going back to how we scale AI. That's been a key to making AI accessible to the organization, is putting it in everybody's hands, making it easy to use. You can build agents in this platform without writing a single line of code. And I think that's what's really resonated with our staff. And again, it's not just our technologists, it's our mortgage brokers, it's our account managers, it's our branch managers. Everybody with a computer now is using.
You make RBC sound like a very fun place to work, I have to say.
Thank you.
And you mentioned this AI for all strategy. Is it really AI for all? Absolutely. And when we talk about the $700 million to $1 billion of value, we had started by looking at that as, okay, let's build 9 projects, 9 systems. And we're well underway to try delivering those initiatives. But I think there's something bigger, that we have a bigger opportunity here with driving the productivity of 96,000 people. Instead of just delivering AI and AI literacy to these 9 projects, we are now doing it across the whole organization. And I think it's an amazing way for us to help people transform in their day-to-day jobs, because this is a concern, right? We know that job loss and employment is a concern for people with AI, and we've seen it across the industry. A lot of people have been displaced through it. But the way we are looking at it is, we've got 17 million clients. We're serving with 96,000 staff members. We want to grow that to 25 million clients. We want to serve those 25 million with the 96,000 staff. So to do that, we think that we've got to find efficiencies so that we can't just burden them with more work, more manual things. How do we remove some of those things? How do we put these tools in their hands so that they can be more effective, that they can deliver more efficiently for our clients, improve their quality of service, but then also serve more clients,
right? That is really key to our goal, and that's why getting AI in the hands of everyone is so important.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast is because I think enterprises are taking a responsible approach to AI, and where they're reskilling their talent and they're bringing them forward. And you are leading that transformation. AI for all within RBC, really transforming that workforce to becoming AI native and serving your customers better with that. So I guess my last question is regarding the engineering function. Given that now these tools are available, even though it's in a low code way, but they're available to everybody, all 96,000 employees, what about the engineering function, the engineers who work for you? What do you expect of them? And where do you see, will we still need engineers? Where do you see this job headed?
I think we'll still need engineers. And I think they'll become builders as we see more and more usage and the evolution of these tools. Like one of the purposes, one of the initial goals of Claude Code was to solve the coding problem, right? How can we deliver? How can developers deliver faster? And we're seeing that these tools are improving efficiency for some of our engineers by 10 times, right? So it's changing how they deliver. Like I think you see with Agile, we brought a lot of Agile ceremonies, a lot of the daily standouts, the Scrum, all of these things, and we're starting to see that we need to deliver these features. We don't need 7 engineers or developers to deliver these features anymore. We can actually have 1 engineer or 2 engineers deliver things more broadly, right? And so there's probably less meetings and fewer ceremonies. Developers and our builders are using these tools to quickly build, quickly iterate, quickly deploy, and then quickly test and quickly deploy, and even push it to production. We're seeing this thing happen very quickly. But I think, and I've said this to our engineers, and I've said this to all our technologists, is just because Vinh can vibe code a system, we should not put that in production and run our banking systems against that. We need our engineers, we need our technologists, we need our builders to know what that code is doing. I'll tell you, peer reviews were sometimes light when humans were doing it. Now having humans do it for AI writing code, thousands of lines of code, it becomes very difficult, right? It's very challenging. So I think that's where we need our builders. We need our builders making sure that the tool, the AI, is writing the right code, that the right test cases were written, that the right use cases are being used. Like maybe we don't need agentic for deterministic or use cases, right? So that's where we see the builders. That's where we see the engineers playing the role is orchestrating, knowing how to use these tools, making sure these tools are effective, and ensuring that the quality and the purpose of and the compliance is all met. That's a very important role that I just don't see changing.
Great. So you actually see an elevation in the role of engineers to builders, and the next generation that you're hiring, you're looking for them to have that AI fluency, the ability to manage and secure and audit all of the code that the AI is writing, and be that Uber engineer or Uber builder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Vinh. Any final thoughts either for others on this transformation journey or others trying to move from pilot to production? Any advice?
So the advice I give technologists that I speak to and other organizations is you've got to get started. And we are in chapter 1 or 2 of a 6-chapter book, and what we're doing today is not what we're going to be doing in 3 years. And so don't fall in love with the tools. Don't fall in love with the paradigms, the technologies you're using, because they could rapidly change. So get started quick. Be willing to pivot with the industry. Don't fall in love with your thing too much, because your thing's going to certainly change. And have fun, because the journey right now is what's important. Building those muscles, knowing how to use those tools, those tools will change. And the paradigms and how they build things and how they deploy things will change. Having that AI literacy, having that knowledge, knowing how to use tools and how to use AI, that's what you've got to build now over the next few years. That's the important part.
Vinh, Tran, thank you so much for joining us. You've got that perfect blend of entrepreneurship and a deep technical background and the ability to scale your organization that's leading to this massive enterprise-wide transformation. I think everyone, including myself, learning from you.
Oh, Aparna, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you.